Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced, head of DevRel here at Dremio, and welcome to my weekly overview video. This is going to be a new thing where I weekly do a video version of the blog that I put out each week, covering projects like Apache Iceberg, Apache Polaris, Apache Arrow, Apache Parquet, really influential data open source projects under the Apache Software Foundation that really underlay a lot of what's going on in the space. So I'll be doing this every week. I also have a blog version of this that I've been doing for a while. You can subscribe to my blog, whether by following me on LinkedIn, Substack, Medium, to make sure you get that content every week so that way you can follow what's going on in open source data stuff. Okay. But again, we're following 4 projects. And what we're starting to notice with all 4 of these projects is efforts to modernize, meaning a lot of bumping up of the version of Java that they support. Okay, for the longest time, people would have to support really, really early versions of Java. Like, I think right now we're like on Java 21 plus, and you'll still see a lot of shops that are like supporting like Java 1.8. So it's nice to start seeing a lot of that the industry and enterprise as a whole is starting to modernize Java to the point where a lot of these projects can sort of start bumping up their versions of Java and really kind of take advantage of the modern benefits of modern versions of Java. Starting to see sort of changes in leadership among some of these projects. Sometimes, new leadership looks like old leadership, but it is what it is. Infrastructure. You're going to see later on that Polaris has gotten some credit, so that way they can now start changing their testing suites that take advantage of sort of like live cloud infrastructure to test against. But first off, let's start off with Apache Iceberg. Apache Iceberg is a project that allows you to treat data on your data lake as database or data warehouse tables in a sense. So essentially, you have tables that are now just sort of these independent things that all your tools can talk to, versus how a table works being defined separately in every tool. And there's a lot of things going on. One, a dedicated Spark sync, so that way there can be some more collaboration between the Spark and Iceberg communities for certain Spark integrations. A new official Iceberg blog. The first post is going to be about Apache Iceberg Summit, which I'll talk more about in a moment. Okay, but that's going to be a thing. The new work on the new OAuth manager. So the idea is it could be another iteration of the auth manager for the Apache Iceberg REST catalog libraries. And this will basically be able to handle things like token refresh and other sort of OAuth patterns. They have a much more robust OAuth design. There's still like a lot of talk about this and how that will work. A lot of work from I think like the original sort of like pitch and idea came from like the Dremio team, and there's just been a lot of iterations, sort of like what that's going to end up looking like. Really fun conversation on the mailing list. Iceberg Summit, again, Iceberg Summit is the annual Iceberg conference. Okay, and that's going to be happening on April 8th and 9th in San Francisco, so do be there. Registration is open over there at icebergsummit.org. So again, that's icebergsummit.org. But January 18th will be the deadline if you want to submit, if you want to speak at Iceberg Summit. So that's January 18th will be the deadline for that. So make sure to submit by then if you're planning to speak at Iceberg Summit. Now, again, reiterating that one more time, that January 18th is that deadline. But now let's move on to the Apache Polaris project. Now, soon it'll be releasing its 1.30 release, where generic tables, a feature that allows Polaris to track and govern things outside of Iceberg. Okay, right now it has a really robust support for Iceberg tables. It was natively built for Iceberg tables, but now expanding beyond Iceberg tables with the generic table API, which is sort of like the first iteration or the first step in building sort of robust like Lakehouse support. The way generic table works is essentially a very client-side heavy implementation. What does that mean? Is that the server, the Polaris catalog, is going to be tracking sort of namespaces, so like the name of a thing. Okay, it'll track the type of the thing. Maybe it's a delta table, maybe it's a hoodie table, along with sort of arbitrary key values on that thing. But now, how do you traverse the metadata of like that hoodie or delta table? Where do you pull in sort of like credentials and things like this? A lot of that stuff is still going to be very client-side driven, meaning the tool you use to access the catalog will have to kind of know how to work with that particular type of table. While with like Iceberg tables, because of the standard of the Iceberg REST catalog, a lot of that stuff is sort of built into the standard, where the catalog can provide you with the credentials, the catalog can help you traverse the metadata and things like that. There is another proposal that is coming down the pipeline for Apache Polaris called Table Services that will then provide sort of like the server side piece of that story. While generic tables allows there to be sort of the log of, hey, these are the things that exist and where to find them. Later on, table services can then come in and be like, okay, how can the server help you to read these and put less burden on the client? So it's, again, all evolving. It's all very interesting. Again, read the email list. It's really interesting. Highly suggest following. It's a really cool project. Basically, now it's getting geared up for Apache graduation, where it's graduating to be a top level Apache software foundation project. Basically has built a robust community and whatnot, and that's all well and good. And that's really important, because, again, being a top level project is a sign of having a robust community driven project that people can trust, that isn't controlled by any particular interest, that has good collaboration between its developers, and robust support that people can really build their platforms on top of. And in that sort of journey of always trying to be, cloud readiness, especially since Polaris is very much a cloud native catalog in its design, there's been AWS credits contributed to the project, so that way they can do more testing against sort of live AWS infrastructure. Now, Apache Arrow is a project that allows you to process data. Essentially, basically what it is a standard way to represent data in memory. That minimizes the need to copy and deserialize and serialize data between different tools, between different machines, because there's standards for not just how the data is represented in memory, but how the data is transported over the network. That's referred to as Apache Arrow Flight. And these standards, again, allow much faster processing, because you're just moving the data where it needs to be without having to create different copies of it in different forms. You can just move it, do what you need to do with it, move it to the next thing, do what you need to do with it. And also, it's just a very compact, efficient form that allows you to kind of store more data within the same amount of memory than you would with other formats. So it just really allows you to get a lot of benefit, maximize the value of infrastructure for data processing. And there's a lot of stuff going on right now. You have new leadership. So one of the co-creators of Arrow has now been appointed as the PMC chair, Antoine Petro. On top of that, they're working on things like time zone advancements, enhancing the temporal type handling, kernel expansion, new selection of compute operators, a lot of really cool stuff. So the Apache Arrow project is always a really interesting one. It's really kind of started from like the early days of mainly the main place you'd see Arrow being used was actually in Dremio. Dremio has been using pretty much Arrow since day one, since a lot of the creators of Arrow were either co-founders of Dremio or founding engineers at Dremio. So that was a big piece of sort of Dremio's design and Dremio's performance for the longest time. But now you're starting to see it everywhere. You see other engines like Data Fusion, which is an open source engine that is built on Arrow. You're starting to see projects like Apache Spark Comet, which is basically replacing the guts of Spark with Apache Arrow processing. It's really becoming the standard for how you do data processing fast. Then there's Parquet. Okay, Parquet is, if Arrow is how you represent the data in memory, Parquet is how you represent the data on disk. I mean, how do you save it as a file? Okay, so that way you can access it later. And Parquet is really efficient, really allows you to kind of save that data into nice compact files, allows you to traverse those files really efficiently with its row groups and metadata on those row groups. And right now they're finalizing their 1.17 release, which is going to bump up to Java 11 as its minimum. Basically, right now they're about to submit their board report, and basically working on a feature for FSST encoding, which should increase the amount of string compression if possible in these files, which will then again reduce file size. And a lot of this, as you'll notice, a lot of the theme here of better data processing is trying to get that data as small as possible, because then you can transport it faster over the network, you can read it faster from disk, and all these little enhancements can pay huge dividends when you're talking about really large amounts of data. Okay, they make, it's not about saving like milliseconds. It can be about saving minutes and hours in processing a particular really complex data set and large data set. So again, we're starting to see a lot of this Java modernization. You're starting to see a lot of this sort of moving on to new versions. So like Iceberg has recently ratified V3. There's already work being done on V4. Parquet is beginning work on V3. So a lot of this sort of moving forward in the project space. Some milestones that you got to keep up an eye on. Again, January 18th, make sure you submit your CFPs if you're going to be speaking at the Apache Iceberg Summit. They're going to have that first Iceberg Spark sync on January 20th. You can find those details on the mailing list. January 21st, Parquet board meeting and Atlanta meetup. Okay, when I say Atlanta meetup, that's an Iceberg Atlanta meetup. And again, trends. You're going to see like Polaris graduation, the generic table that allows multi-format support, things like that. But the cool thing about all these projects is if you want to actually use all of them in just sort of one place, there's an easy way to do it. Use Dremio. Dremio takes advantage of all these projects to build a really robust lakehouse platform. Dremio has been using Apache Arrow to do all of its data processing since pretty much the beginning. Okay, I mean, Dremio's about 10 years old. Arrow's about 10 years old. It kind of lines up. Then Iceberg, when you use Dremio, Dremio has first-class Iceberg support. It's going to write data to Iceberg. It natively uses Iceberg. It's just the way, it's the lingua franca in Dremio as far as how tables are written and what a table is. And everything's really optimized for working with Apache Iceberg. You have then again, because you're using Apache Iceberg, all the data saved is Parquet, and Dremio has really good Parquet support as well for doing querying on Parquet data sets. And when you have a native catalog built into Dremio, Dremio's open catalog, that is actually a Apache Polaris implementation with a lot of really cool bits like auto table optimization and other things kind of wrapped into that implementation. So basically, when you have a Dremio project, it's not something you add on. It's just there. You have a Iceberg catalog, a Lakehouse catalog that's just right there. You can still connect your other Lakehouse catalogs, but it's all there. And then plus you have a nice agentic AI wrapper where you can just ask natural language questions of your data and get back answers. Now, you can just try this out for free. You don't have to take my word for it. And you can see all these cool open source projects all working together in one place. Just head over to dremio.com/get started and try that out. But otherwise, I'll see you guys all next week. Have a great day. Enjoy. Ciao.